There are moments spent with one whom I love, where he speaks of my stories in me so angelically that I actually believe in myself. In fact, I feel I could fly and the sky knows my name. Those are sweet, sparkling moments, moments I wish I could carry into the next morning, to the place where doubts return as soon as I slip back into the conscious world from the unconscious one. I wish I could bake the moments where he speaks so magically to me that I believe into sweet little cupcakes. Neatly mix, pack, and pour each compliment, belief and song, into the oven where it will rise and keep me warm all afternoon long. Really, I just want to hold on to his words. You may at first believe me to be vain for loving how much my love aids me in loving myself. But he's magic, you know, and his words carry gentle enchantments. For it is no small thing to spark the firework of belief in oneself. And here I am in the sky again, where all things sparkle, just like his words. Cupcakes and clouds, my love, those are your sparks. I'll speak of them day, night, and in the corner of my deepest doubts. Maybe, if I do this for you, show you just what your magic can do, both of our dreams will finally come true, and you will see yourself truly, just as I do. That poem is called Cupcakes and Clouds, and it's by me. And of course, you can find it and many more for free at lovingcreatively.com. It's a love poem. I don't write a whole lot of those because I'm kind of emo, but that's what this episode is all about. Not me being emo, but love. You know, with all this talk of abuse and loving somebody through that, I thought it would be a good time to kind of dive into the why, because rarely is a human life all the bad things, right? Or all the good things. We're all kind of a mix of everything. And although my husband and I went through a very difficult time where I wasn't sure if we'd see the other side, you know, like battling these horrible abusive things with his ex, you know, we went through a really, really hard time, and I wasn't sure if we would see the other side, but at the same time, incredibly beautiful things were happening, and I've learned quite a bit about love. So it wasn't just this constant battle, even in the worst of it. While that battle was going on, beautiful things were being born at the same time. And so I wanted to dedicate this episode to sharing with you what I know about love. And like I said before, that poem that I read to you is about my husband. And I think the realest way to know if you're really in love, or if it's love that you feel, is if that relationship causes you to love yourself more. And love is a very deep, complicated thing, but worth the lifetime of learning. So that being said, I'm gonna spend some time just sharing with you what I know about love, how to recognize it when you've found it, my experience with it, how loving my husband has, you know, caused me to love myself more too and to reach higher, and just the signs, you know, that you've actually met the one, the signs that the one is worth it, the signs that the worst of times are worth it. So with that being said, though, I think for us to really understand, you know, how I came to love him, it helps to dive a little bit into the past and times where I knew I wasn't in love. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I'd rather talk about my husband, but I think some of my experiences might help. So I'm going to start again with dreams. You know, if you've been listening for a while, you know that I have very, very vivid dreams. And excuse me, I'm still drinking my coffee because it's winter here, and we need the small things like warm beverages to get us through this frigid hellscape of, what is it outside right now? Oh, 3 degrees. Yeah, I'm living in a place where it is 3 degrees. That's not it. That's not it, friends. I got to get out of here. So that being said, I apologize in advance for my pauses as I drink this warm beverage and try to pretend that I'm not here. So speaking of things that maybe don't bring me as much joy, my past relationships and dreams. Something that I've learned about dreams is that our subconscious is often trying to tell us something or process something. And the best way, like if you have a dream that you remember, is to, kind of when you wake up, sort of sit still in bed, try not to move too much, because the more you move, the more you might forget it. You got to kind of sit still and really dig into your brain and just kind of ask yourself, what did that mean? And it might take a minute for it to come to you, but usually your inner voice will tell you what that dream was getting at. And here and there, every few weeks, I have dreams about two in particular, but like two past boyfriends. And we're talking about like high school and college days, right? Not necessarily anything in the recent past. And there's kind of two figures that tend to pop up again and again. And the reason isn't because I miss them and I want that relationship back. Absolutely not. The reason I've learned through like having this dream and asking myself is that if these two particular people come back in my dreams, it's to tell me something that I need to learn about love. Because you might hear a lot from therapists that, it's our family of origin, right? The family where we grew up that teaches us about love and attachment, right? So the lessons you learned about love and attachment as a kid or from your family of origin, that's kind of how you're going to be wired to look at love or to look at relationships. And that's true. But something I've learned from some of the experts who've been on Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast is that it's not just our family of origins that teaches us about love, but it's also our early experiences with love. And in the case of high school, right, your teen years, but also college, your early 20s, there's a lot going on with brain development, right? And we're feeling things pretty strongly with strong hormones attached to them. And, something that Ed Milet has taught me is that if you feel something strongly in your body, it's going to get wired pretty hard into your brain. So whatever we feel in our bodies naturally becomes a pattern in our brain because everything is all connected. So if you're feeling this, headstrong, intense love or headstrong, intense heartbreak very strongly in your body, it's gonna wire itself there. So that being said, these two particular relationships that I had, one in high school, one in college, I'll tend to dream about the men from those relationships, and they're usually popping up again, trying to talk to me, or they're just there all of a sudden. And I had one of those dreams last night about a college boyfriend, and this was probably one of the most painful heartbreaks that I ever had. And what I realized is that it was about the time that relationship ended, and then I went into probably 2 years of just being heartbroken over it ending, that I started lowering my standards for relationships. And I don't mean to, say that any other human isn't worthy of me. It's not that. It's just, a matter of who's right for me and who's not, and how is that person treating me. And so when I sat this morning and asked myself, okay, why did he pop up? I got two answers. And one of them was because that heartbreak taught you, or you believed that you weren't enough for someone in the thick of that relationship. You believed you weren't enough, and you believed you didn't deserve love. And to give you a little bit of a background on that particular relationship and just me, I very much used to be a practicing Christian, and I have to just be upfront with you that I am still struggling a lot with Christianity as a religion. I do, and I mean I believe it to be very, very toxic and kind of based in shame and based in the idea that we need to look outside of ourselves to become whole. Now, that being said, I know that there are some genuinely good Christians out there. I have some friends who are, so I'm not, I think it's dangerous to reject, a large people group or to reject someone just because they, practice a religion that you don't believe in. So please know that I say that, but I do have some very close friends who are Christians. And, but that being said, for me, Christianity was a very toxic thing. I have a very strong imagination. I'm a very sensitive, passionate person, right? Like I'm a creative. And so I feel things deeply. And if I was told something or taught something in church or in college, and I went to a Christian college about what I should be doing, how I should be living my life, I listened pretty hardcore. I've always been kind of a rule follower and a nerd, like getting my homework done on time. And again, if I was told to do something, okay, I was going to do it. And when I was in college, I met someone who I just fell so hard for instantly. I was attracted to him. He was a missionary kid. And what that means is that his parents were missionaries who moved to another country to try to spread God's word and love. And, even that whole concept is something I kind of have an issue with now, but, white savior stuff. But anyway, that's a conversation for a different time. And I fell hard for him. I felt hard for him. And, I was with him for probably a year. And I'll never forget this moment that I had with him when I was dating him, where we went to go see, there was this beautiful house kind of out in the suburbs that he had to pick something up from. And while we visited that house, we saw that there was a lake nearby. Excuse me, very dry air. We saw that there was a lake nearby, and it started to, and when we picked up this thing, we just kind of lingered for a couple minutes to look at the lake. And we stood out on the dock where it was raining, and it felt so magical. We were hugging and just holding each other in the rain out on this dock. And I believed in that moment that it was a sign from God, right? That I had found the love that I was meant to find, because in certain Christian circles, by the way, marriage is pushed really hard, right? And a lot of Christian love is modeled after marriage and things like that. It's this like sort of sacred thing. And again, that's a whole other podcast when you feel like you haven't, gotten married soon enough or met the person you're supposed to marry soon enough. But it's this idea that, you get married and you kind of go on God's journey together. And that's what I thought I had found in that moment on that dock in the rain, because it just felt so romantic. And I thought I was so in love. And I thought that, this is it. I'm on the journey I'm supposed to be on. And I remembered even writing him a letter after about just like, and I used the words, I was so grateful to accept this gift that I felt like God was giving me. And in that case, I believed it was him. He fit all the boxes, right? The son of a missionary family, right? And he had grown up in another country. And that I found fascinating in itself. I've always loved stories, right? I create stories. I love stories. So anytime somebody had a story, especially of a place very different from mine, I was very much drawn to that person. And I still am now, but, in a healthy way. And so, and he was tall, and my family's obsessed with tall people. We're a tall family. So it was like this weird, like, you have to date a tall person kind of thing. So like he was tall, he checked boxes. He was smart. He was somebody who very easily understood a lot of the concepts we were studying in college. And so, he checked these boxes, right? And I thought, this is it. Not only am I in love, but I'm fulfilling God's plan for me. I found this marriage thing. Yeah, we're going to get married. We love each other. And again, I don't want to spend too much time in this relationship, but it didn't work out. Some things cropped up that were not so fun. And, it was kind of this mutual, yep, let's go our separate ways. This isn't working right now, but, I still had to go to college with him, and we both lived on or near campus, so I would see him all the time. My college wasn't that big, and I still loved him. At least I believed I did. And when I saw that he started, he had dated like 2 other girls while we were there, and I was just crushed because I had hoped that we would get back together. I hoped that we would grow up or we would find each other again. And every time I would see him, my heart would race, time would slow down, and I would hope, day after day that he would come back to me and tell me, I love you. This is worth it. Let's figure this out. We're meant for each other, all that stuff. So I was just crushed every time that didn't happen. And my family, who had all been hoping that I would marry him too, I'd gotten lots of compliments from my family about him. They said, well, maybe you guys just weren't right for each other. And I don't know why, but that always stung. That always rubbed me the wrong way. And you would think, why? You're not right for each other. That seems like a pretty straightforward thing to say, but I guess when I reflect on it now, why that bothered me so much, I guess there's a couple reasons. Number one, it's like that defensive, like, no, you don't know. It felt right to me. I was doing what I was supposed to do, right? Like, don't tell me this wasn't right. This is what it was supposed to be. I found this Christian man who's the son of missionaries. We were going to do God's plan together. Like we were so right for each other. I felt so in love around him, all that stuff. Don't tell me it wasn't right. And that, I think, is why it bothered me so much, because I was always the type of person who wanted to follow the rules and who wanted to say, yep, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And so to hear people say it wasn't right when I had worked so hard, to find the right kind of man, it just really stung. And I believed that I was still in love with him too. And so it hurt to just hear that, this man that I believed would come back to me one day wasn't right for me. And to kind of fast forward, I was in lots of different relationships throughout the rest of my 20s. And probably the biggest mistake is that here's what would happen to me in my 20s. I would go back and forth between finding people who were abusive and self-destructive, right? Like bad boys, if you want to call them that, but like, men who really didn't care about their image so much, except for being this kind of bad boy thing. So I would fluctuate between this sort of bad boy abusive image and then kind of go back, like, the man that I married in my first marriage, I believed was, good and kind and gentle. And I kind of thought when I met him, which was, right after I had left like an abusive relationship, I thought, okay, I'm back on track. I'm following the rules again. I'm going to find this marriage. I'm going to find this relationship. I can still do this, and obviously it was the wrong relationship again. And it was because, again, when I reflect on my 20s and I reflect on the bad relationships that I had, a couple things were going on. I was still trying to meet expectations that were not my own. I was still trying to meet this Christian expectation of you get married, you have the family, you follow God's plan. And again, a lot of just pressure was put on the whole idea of marriage. And then I was kind of oscillating from that to rejecting it and purposely seeking out these people that I knew were bad, that I knew were unhealthy, that I knew weren't treating me well. But it was like this sort of rejection of that system of marriage. But it also was, this idea of thinking that I didn't deserve better, right? Because in my mind, I failed. And some of the judgments from those around me made me feel like I failed, right? When I got divorced, when I couldn't make the relationship and college work, it was like, well, I guess I just don't deserve love. I guess everything that I'm doing isn't enough. I guess all these following rules, all of this just, it's not good enough. I guess I just don't deserve love. So again, I would repeatedly just seek out these unhealthy situations because I didn't think I deserved better. I didn't think love was for me. I had already, quote unquote, failed at it, right? So I guess I'm just screwed. And I could talk forever about this, but I realized from my dream and upon reflection that the time when I really internalized the belief that I didn't deserve love and that I wasn't enough was that college relationship. When I saw that fail, I internalized the belief that I wasn't enough to make this dream work. So fast forward, right? Fast forward like a divorce in my 20s, a couple more just unhealthy relationships, distractions, right? Like I think those of us who are single and feeling like we failed because we're single or hurting, when we've got some unresolved shit going on, we sort of just want to be distracted, right? And that's where the roster comes from. And by the roster, I mean like the dating roster, right? That's something that's heavily emphasized right now. Like, oh yeah, I've got a guy who I'm seeing for this. And oh, then there's this guy who bought this for me. And then there's, oh yeah, we go out and have fun. And oh yeah, we just sleep together. And that is kind of almost praised now in modern culture, right? Like having that roster of seeing multiple people. The roster sucks and it's very unfulfilling. And I'm not against dating. I think it's really good to date and figure out, the relationship that's right for you. I'm not saying don't date, but I'm saying when we get to a point where we're feeling like we have accolades or we're excited because we have this roster of people, that's maybe the point where it gets to be kind of unhealthy because you feel like you need these external boxes to be checked to be okay or to feel like you're worth loving. And none of that worked for me, none of that worked. I tried and none of it worked. And, throughout all of these dating issues, I also was working on self-improvement, right? Like I've shared that I rebuilt after my divorce, right? Like I bought my own house again. Like I had a job where I was teaching and serving people. I was always reading and learning and started writing my book and all that stuff. So it's like, again, people are complicated. We're never all or nothing. At the same time that I had these sort of destructive relationships, I also was believing in myself. And on that note, I was introduced to my husband by a friend of mine. He was her boss. And the second that I sat down with him on this date, I had never met him before. It was kind of a blind date. I started a conversation that I never wanted to finish. As soon as I sat with him, I realized it was so easy to talk to him. I never wanted to stop talking to him. And that's all that I want. And even now, I can tell you years later on the other side of a lot of beautiful moments and a lot of bullshit, that's all I want is to just sit and talk to him. That hasn't changed. And the major difference with my husband compared to anybody else I ever dated is he made me love myself more and believed in the things that I believed in myself. And that is worth everything. There's arguments we've had, sure, where I didn't like when it got ugly. I didn't like, getting defensive, but that was an argument. That was a learning opportunity. That was not who I became. And from the moment that I've met my husband, I have come to know myself more deeply and beautifully than I ever have. And that is the sign that you are with the right person. When you grow to love yourself more, no matter what's going on. And let me tell you a couple things about my husband that set him apart. I had never really talked about my writing. I had started writing my first book, Sheltered, before I met my husband, but I didn't really show anybody anything. Partly because I wanted to keep the story kind of sacred and in my heart, but also because I didn't think people would believe in me. A lot of times when you're doing something creative or innovative, you get rejected and people don't want to hear it or they think it's a dumb idea or whatever it is, but I knew I could share it with him. And he read it and he has this magical way of speaking where it's like he brings my dreams to life. He was like, Jenna, you've got something here with this book. And he's continued to do the same thing with literally everything I've written since then. My novella Monsters, my new novella, which is just released, by the way. You can get it on Amazon, She Death's Reflection by J. Dill. My second novella, She Death's Reflection, my poetry, my short stories, he reads them all and then sort of breathes life into me because I'm a very sensitive artist. I'll write something and then I'll go, oh, this is shit. I hate it. I have these weird insecure moments. And he counters that with specific things that speak to him about the work, and he doesn't even realize he's doing it. And that's what my poem was about, the magic in his words, because it is magical. When he speaks about me, when he speaks about my work, I feel like I can fly. And to the note of like becoming a better person, we've had some ugly arguments, but since the moment I've met him, I've never wanted to turn to my old ways of feeling good about myself when I was lonely, when I was fluctuating between trying to follow the rules with relationships and dating people who are unhealthy for me. And for me, it was distractions. Those were my old ways of dealing with something I didn't want to feel. Since I've met him, I don't want to be distracted anymore. I've wanted to love myself more and deal with all of my attachment issues too, because that's the thing about falling in love. You have to really look at what are some of those deep attachment issues that you have that are then leading to intense arguments. And I noticed over and over again, I was saying to him, well, fine, why don't you leave? Or what? I'm not doing this enough for you. It's not enough. You don't see it. Those were common phrases I would come back to in arguments with him. Why don't you leave? And I'm doing this wrong, or and I had to take a look at that. And it ties back to some of these early heartbreaks of the belief that, well, if I get real love, if I get a taste of it, it's not going to work out. It's going to get snatched from me and then rubbed in my face. Just like my college relationship where I thought I was going to marry him, but instead we broke up and I had to see him around this small campus dating other girls. And I took that as a slap in the face, like they were enough, but I wasn't. So there's that deep-seated belief that I internalized then that love's just going to be taken from me. And I can attribute that to the destructive relationships too, like purposely dating people who I knew weren't good for me because it wouldn't sting if they ever left me. So knowing this and then, and then, like I said, being this real rule follower for the other belief of not being enough, it was like I believed I did everything right in this college relationship I had, but it wasn't enough for the relationship to work or for him to stay. So those were things I carried with me. It happened when I was like 19, 20 years old, and I carried it into my 30s. But with my husband, because I knew, I could feel that there was something real there, and because he spoke life into me, it was worth tackling those attachment issues. And they are slowly getting better every day. I take these dreams as a sign that they're getting better because it's like my body fighting back to go, hey, you deserve real love. And now I can look back on that relationship when I was 19 and 20 and see it for what it really was. Yes, I really was in love at the time, but that man who I dated did not believe in me. He was kind of patriarchal, and I noticed I've always been an outspoken person, and I really didn't like a lot of the sexist vibes that were going around campus. I think I've maybe shared before, maybe not. Like I was labeled a feminist on campus, like it was a bad thing, because I disagreed with a lot of the ways that my peers, the fellow students on campus, were using the Bible to assert the belief that men are the head of the household, that they have the final say, that they are the leaders. And this boyfriend I dated was kind of that belief of, well, yeah, men, we are at the end of the day the ones who know more. I remembered him telling him that when we got married, I wasn't sure if I would want to change my name. And he actually got mad at me for it. And, didn't like this sort of independent belief that I had that, women should not necessarily be defined by their husband. And, he also would kind of talk down to me, because he understood certain things better than I did in class. He would understand sometimes what the professors were saying faster, or he was really good at the math and computer science classes. I felt less than around him. He didn't see some of my creative interpretations of the world, or he didn't see some of the injustices that I was pointing out as worth listening to, worth exploring. He would kind of just talk down to me as if I was being too radical. And again, looking back now, I just want to talk to that 19 and 20-year-old girl and say, listen, Listen, you are worth so much more. You are more than enough. Do you know who you're going to be someday? You're going to be a successful author. You are going to be the kind of woman who can speak life into people, who can encourage people, like my students, or my friends, to be their best selves, to show them that they deserve more. You are more than enough. He just doesn't see you. You are more than enough. And you are going to meet the love of your life. You are going to meet someone who sees you and wants to build up the things that you love about yourself. Don't believe that you're not enough. Don't believe that you're a failure. This was the universe's way of protecting you from somebody who would have just dragged you down. I don't think I would have believed it back then, but I wish I had had that voice in my ear. And so I'm going to say this. If you are someone who's experiencing heartbreak and you're just stuck on it, take a look at the situation. Did this person really believe in who you really are? If you're really honest, did they? Chances are probably not. But even if you think they did, it might mean that there's something deeper to you. There might be more of yourself that you need to discover, because the real person who's going to love you the best sees your actual soul, sees the best in you, and puts wings on it. That's what my husband did for me. And every part of myself that was deep down, it was like that wanted to come out when I met him. And I mean like my best creative self. I've never written more in my life than after I met him. And it's because I knew he believed in me. He also introduced me once I was ready, and he didn't push it. He's the one who introduced me to Jay Shetty. He owned Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk. And I remember he brought it up to me once when we first started dating. And I kind of went, no. I don't want any kind of organized religion, whatever. No. And he was like, okay, and kind of just let it be. But fast forward a couple years when I had the stomach flu and I needed something to read. I was just stuck in bed and I saw Think Like a Monk sitting on the shelf and I thought, all right, let's check it out. And then my life was never the same. I can talk to my husband about who I really am. I can talk to him about my psychic beliefs, because I do believe in the psychic arts and I practice them, and he believes in them too and will speak with me about them. He doesn't dismiss them as foolish or, hokey pokey or whatever you want to call it. He believes too, and he builds up that sort of, psychic strength that I have. I speak to him about movies, and sometimes that's hard. He grew up, loving Star Wars, and he still does, and I like Star Wars too, but if we are honest, I think we can see, especially in the original Star Wars movies, a lot of sexist stuff happens, but he listens and he takes it seriously when I talk to him about that. He doesn't dismiss it. And at the end of the day, no matter what I've been through with him, I have always been growing into a person who I love. Always. I'm studying more. I'm reading different things. I'm wanting to create. The environment that I have with him is an environment of creativity. We also paint together sometimes just for fun. I want to read more. I want to learn more. I want to reach higher. And that's what I know about love. I used to worry that the arguments that I had with him meant we weren't right for each other. It's like, well, we fight, and sometimes those fights have gotten ugly. And when I say ugly, I don't mean abusive. I just mean like we raised our voices, right? Like I got really defensive. I resorted to the language of fine, then just leave. Well, now I look at arguments differently too. We're always learning how to argue. They say some of the healthiest couples are the ones who figured out how to argue. But I see those arguments, every single one of them, as a sign of ways that both he and I still needed to grow, and a sign that there were some defensive walls I had put in place that needed to come down. And my husband is worth those walls coming down. I love who he is. And the beauty of our relationship is I've helped spark creativity in him too. I loved the quote from the Avengers Endgame movie where Thor is talking to his mom, when he goes back in time and she says, Everyone fails at who they're supposed to be. Now you can be who you really are. And my husband and I love each other for who we really are. Those deep parts of our soul that were maybe rejected as a child or as a teenager. And I found that part of this personal growth that I've been doing of becoming somebody who is more loving, who seeks peace, and who wants to just create more things, I've discovered that that's who I was as a kid. I was always a creative kid. I think back to the times when I was a kid and I got compliments. The ones that made me feel the best were the ones that were about my imagination. I still remember my daycare lady, right? Like when I went to daycare, so I must have been like 4, so somehow I held on to this memory of being 4 years old. And I was showing her this picture I made of a fish or something like that. And she goes, you really do have a strong imagination, don't you? And I still remember that. It made me feel so good. And it was about my imagination. That was the kind of thing I wanted to be praised for. My husband now makes me feel good about my imagination. So when you're out there dating, you're out there looking for love, look for somebody who loves the things that you love the most about yourself. And maybe those are some things that you've buried because they were rejected by the wrong people, Maybe they're buried, but they're still there. I think the best sign that you're in love and that you're with the right person is that they make you want to know more of yourself. You want to grow with them. You want to face your own demons for them. Growth. That's huge. And my husband has grown quite a bit too. Both with, the things we've learned from escaping domestic abuse, but just other things, his own attachment issues. We've both grown together. And love is worth it. And with my husband, I was willing to ask myself the hard questions. And so if you're in a situation where you're maybe helping someone you love, just like I was helping him, get out of this abusive relationship, you have to ask yourself, is this worth it? And I was prepared to answer myself yes or no. But I knew the answer was yes, because we were never all or nothing. Even as we were having all of these arguments, I was writing my book. Tom was looking at what was going on. He was looking at his own attachment issues. He was looking at himself. He was reflecting. He was seeking help. He was working on it because love was worth it for him too. And recently, I again was listening to Ed Milet. He's really been in my ear lately. And he talks about living on the roller coaster versus the merry-go-round. Sometimes I think people believe that life should just be a merry-go-round, and they settle for something that looks good on paper because it's the merry-go-round. It's easy, right? You're going in one direction your whole life. But Ed Milet, this wildly successful millionaire, says, I would rather be on the roller coaster, the ups and the downs and the disappointments and the joys and the fears when you don't know what's around the corner, but then when you get around the corner and it's more beautiful than you ever could have imagined. He talks about wanting to be on the roller coaster. My life with my husband is a roller coaster, but not in a way that's unhealthy, right? Because there's finding that balance, right? You don't want to be in a toxic relationship, right? Where it's a roller coaster, but there's actually a healthy roller coaster too. Because as the work of all the greats, Brene Brown, Jay Shetty, Ed Milet, all the neuroscientists out there, all of their work will tell you that the best way to live your most joyful life is to live vulnerably. And if you're living vulnerably, you open yourself up to being rejected or hurt. But you also are opening yourself up to living your real life, living as the best you. And so if I had to kind of, summarize this whole episode in just a short period of time, I would say, when you're looking for love, find somebody who sees your soul, who sees maybe some of the things that you've forgotten or that other people dismissed. When they love what you really love about yourself, you're set up for success. And the fact that my husband saw my soul, and he even could see my soul while he was in the thick of this abuse, he could still see me. That's how powerful love was. he still encouraged me. He was investing in my books. He was investing in my mind. He was encouraging me about the things that mattered most. And he was able to do that even while being abused. That's love. That's real love. When somebody sees you for the things that you love the most about yourself, and when you are encouraged to reach for your dreams, to reach for your goals, to aim higher, and when you see that you are growing into somebody who you love, that's how you know you're in love, when you begin to love yourself too. I want to thank you so much for your time, so much for listening, and please know that I wish you all of the best too, and I am excited to chat with you again in a few days.